guests, esteemed panelists, and passionate readers. Just imagine, every day millions of people live in plain sight, their struggles invisible to the world around them. In the gleaming towers of our cities, the wealthy walk through their gates of privilege, untouched by the realities of those who clean their floors, watch their children, and endure violence in the alleys below. And we call this progress, we call this development, and we call this success. But what if the price of progress in the erasure of is the erasure of human lives and the distortion of truth and the manufacture of untruth? How much longer can we keep pretending that the people who live in the slums are merely others and criminals and whatnot and not part of our shared society? This session that dive deep into the powerful work Truth, Untruth by Mahashweta Devi, a fierce advocate for social justice who uses her storytelling to critique systemic inequality, feudal structures, and government apathy, so on and so forth, translated from Bangla into English by Anjum Katyal. To bring this compelling narrative to life, it is my honor to introduce the translator of this powerful work, Anjum Katyal. Is a distinguished writer, editor with a robust career in literary and cultural publishing, formerly the chief editor at Seagull Books and author of seminal works on Indian theatre, including Habib Tanveer, Towards an Inclusive Theatre, Badal Sirkar, Towards a Theatre of Conscience, and Safdar Hashmi, Towards Theatre for a Democracy. She has also edited numerous volumes on theatre studies and a translator who has brought into English a range of culturally significant works, including plays by, as I already told you, Habib Tanveer, fiction by Mahashweta Devi, and children's narratives by Meera Mukherjee. Her most recent work, Truth, Untruth, also awarded the WOW Book Award for Translation 2024. She's currently director, APJ Kolkata Literary Festival. We welcome you, ma'am. And presiding over the session, Professor Satish Ekant, a former professor and head of the Department of English, HNB Garhwal University, and former fellow of the Indian Institute of Advanced Study, Shimla, has had a sharp literary insight and commitment to intellectual discourse, have enriched Valley of Words over the years. I and we welcome you, sir. I would like to invite our lead discussant, Bijoya Sevia, writer, translator, and educator, did root in the heritage of Khasi culture. Her acclaimed Khasi to English translations include The Teachings of Elders, The Main Ceremonies of the Khasis, the book about one god, and Khasi myths and folktales. Her debut novel, Shadowmen and Two Stories, was nominated for the Rabindranath Tagore Literary Prize, and her essays on Meghalaya feature in anthologies by Ruskin Bond and Namita Gokhale. Her latest work, From Sylhet to Shillong, is a biography of her father. She's a chairperson of the Anfield Senior Secondary School, Vikasnagar. We welcome you, ma'am. Now I invite our esteemed guest to begin with insightful discussion. Thank you.
Let me begin with congratulating Anjum Katyal for receiving the WOW 2014 Award for Translation, the best translation in the year 2023. As you know, this is a translation from Mahashweta Devi's novella, Satya Asatya. I would like to briefly introduce Mahashweta Devi for the uninitiated. Acclaimed writer and social activist Mahashweta Devi was born in Dhaka, now in Bangladesh, in 1926, and grew up in West Bengal in a literary family. She was educated in Dhaka and later in Shantiniketan in Calcutta. She began writing in the 1950s, moved by the everyday reality she saw around her in rural Bengal. In 1956, she published her first novel, Jhansi Rani, the Queen of Jhansi, a fictionalized biography of a woman who became a symbol of resistance to the British Empire. Her later works include Aranyad Adhikar, the right to the forest, Choti Munda Evam Tiru Tir, Rudali, Kulaputra, Agnigarbha, Dauli, Bashai Tutu, Dust on the Road, and Our Non-Veg Cow. Her novel Hazar Chaturasi Ma, Mother of 1084, dealt with the Naxalite movement from British era tribal hero Birsa Munda, fictionalized in Aranyar Adhikar, to the contemporary struggles in Nandigram and Singur. She spoke out fearlessly for the oppressed. Mahashweta Devi used her native Bangla to communicate her point of view. Of course, much of her work has been translated into several Indian languages and into English, most notably by Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak, a post-colonial theorist and professor at Columbia University. Spivak's translations have given a universal currency to her narratives, and the marginalized sections in various parts of the world have identified with her fictional characters. Truth Untruth is the most recent English translation done by Anjum Katyal of Mahashweta's Bangla novella Satya Asatya, to which this session is devoted. Perhaps there is no other Bangla writer except Tagore who is known and read so widely across the world. Her stories may be locally inflected, but her concerns are universal. Her stories, Draupadi and Daulati, are powerful statements of subaltern defiance. The subjects of her stories invariably are migrant workers, the Dalits, landless laborers, poor abandoned women, and tribal people. In one of her interviews, when asked about her source of inspiration, she is reported to have said, "For me, the endless source of ingredients for writing are the amazingly noble, suffering human beings." Her fictional narratives are very close to subalternist notion of historiography, which problematizes the ideological appropriation of history and makes an attempt to highlight the contribution of the subordinate classes and groups in the making of history. By making the tribals the subject of most of her works, she challenges the absence of their stories in the recorded literary history. Her texts produce a counter-historical discourse by re-examining the dominant nationalist history and exposing its elitist bias by focusing attention on the neglected and marginalized locations. Her texts attempt to reverse the subtle political process of the post-colonial nation state that first create and then alienate the subaltern from the mainstream nation. Thus, she attempts to write the fictional history from below, as she exposes the injustice and exploitation meted out of the lowest strata of the Indian society. Mahashweta Devi was influenced by the leftist movements of the 1940s when she chose to work among the poorest of the poor in the tribal areas of southern West Bengal and in other parts of the country. Yet in her last years, she vehemently opposed the former left government's controversial land acquisition policies in Singur and Nandigram in West Bengal. Mahashweta Devi died at the age of 90 in Calcutta on 28 July 2016. We should now engage in a lively discussion with Anjum Katyal on the translation work that she has done, and I would ask Bijoy to engage it in translation.
Thank you. Congratulations, Anjum, first of all. It's an amazing translation, and I love the book. And welcome you all to the discussion, what promises to be a riveting discussion. First of all, as Satish ji has said, that she actually was a great champion of the challenged people, economically challenged and socially challenged and so on. And she was an activist. But this book is quite different. What made you choose this book to translate?
Thank you very much for that question. Also for saying such nice things about the book, which I hope some of you will get around to reading at some point. It's
You must.
in case you feel that it's all too serious and dreary and dull, let me assure you that this book, and that partly relates to the question Vijaya just asked me, this book is quite lively. It's a page turner. It's set over a period of 48 hours.
It's a murder mystery.
And it revolves around a murder, a dead
Yes.
body. And this dead body is doing some strange things, or strange things are being done to this dead body, and everybody seems to be involved somehow or the other in being complicit, including the corpse. So it's got a lot of humor in it, of a certain kind of dark, very sarcastic, very sardonic kind. And so partly the reason why I sort of really fell for this particular novella when I read it in Bengali is because it seemed, located in a different space from much of her earlier work that I had read and also worked on, edited, also translated, which were more rural, or if they were based in a city, they were based in very lower middle class or poor slum, basti kind of situations. If they were in the country or rural areas, they were located amongst the very, very marginalized people who lived there. This book, on the other hand, was set in Calcutta. Calcutta I could recognize roughly in the 1970s, which is when I had also been a younger person living in the city. So there was a lot to recognize, but there was also a lot to understand afresh because of the way she looked at things. Like, for example, what Bijoya brought out, that she focuses on the people who are challenged. And you'll see that again in this book. These are people who are challenged. One of the main characters, or the central figure, this woman Jamuna, is a domestic servant. She works in 4 or 5 households part-time. She lives in a neighboring slum. And even the upper class people who are there, the richer people, the employers and the bosses, are all challenged in different ways. They're all dealing with their own demons. So I found this book fascinating because of the humor, because of the swift pace, because she packs in so much in the space of very little, says so much about society, about people's relationships, about power hierarchies, and sees everything through a very sarcastic and, sort of wide open, unromantic lens, in a sense, and makes it very contemporary. It doesn't seem dated at all. And also, I think I liked the fact that there's nobody in this book is an outright villain. They have black and whites, there's sort of gray areas in them all, including so they're no straightforward victims. Everybody's trying to take advantage of everybody else. There's some matlab, there's some vested interest, there's some game being played. So some of them are trying to get power, trying to subvert the system, trying to use it to their advantage, and others are trying to, sort of protect their wealth and not be taken for a rent. So everybody's kind of, like I would say, shades of gray, more than 50 maybe shades of gray, right? So, so that, if I could have answered your question, Bijoya,
Yes.
that's roughly what I felt.
It's really a highly readable book, as Anjum says. And all the characters, some of them, like they've committed a crime and all that, but they're very endearing. And there's nothing dark about this book based on a murder and a body that's being moved around. And there's something very, it's really funny. It's really funny. At the same time, it's serious. There is a kind of, a narrative about the people in the slums and the upper middle class and middle class. And the connect between the two worlds are the domestics. But there's one thing, Anjum, which I find rather strange, because she's known to be a feminist. I'd rather call her humanist, but anyway, she's feminist. But the two women in this book, Jamuna and Ila, are pathetic. What was she trying to convey through their characters?
Thank you for asking that question, Bijoya, because actually you've put your finger on a very central issue surrounding the way Mahashweta Devi is perceived. Now, she herself would say, I am not a feminist, right? She never admitted, she never claimed that for herself. And a reason, one of the main core reasons why she didn't was she felt that this whole concept of feminism was a very sort of artificially implanted or imported concept which she associated with white middle class women in the West. And she was not alone in this. A lot of writers, a lot of artists rejected the label of feminism, while at the same time being intensely feminist in their daily lives. But if you ask them, they say, no, I'm not a feminist. That's all for, la-di-da people. I'm just a simple, sort of straightforward person. There was this connect in a lot of that generation's minds between that tag. You remember there was a time when everybody thought that feminists are bra burners, and that's all they are. And that was the kind of lingering association that people of that generation had. She was, however, a staunch leftist. And in her worldview, which again was a very common worldview for people who held leftist views, she felt you have to address class and not gender. So to her, the women were part of a class structure, right? And that was the important thing. The exploitation was because of class. And she felt that it wasn't so much just looking at the gender issues. That's what she felt at times, but if you look at her work critically, you'll see that she was very, very aware of the gender aspect even within class relations. How women were
Ela, for
at the
example.
absolute bottom of the ladder, of the rungs, and they were getting it from all sides, from their own class members, male, as well as the ones above them. Having said that, the other part of your question, I didn't find Jamuna pathetic. Jamuna is a very strong character. She's gutsy, she's feisty, she's cheeky, she's impudent. She decides what she wants to do. Even when her so-called bhais, brothers in the slum, give her advice, she has her own plans and she has her own secrets, and she's going to try and exploit them, even though on the first surface of it she seeks their help, right? So Jamuna to me was not a sort of a pathetic creature at all.
She was more a victim to what happened.
In this case she was, but she'd also, it was something.
Yeah, she took it in her stride in a very,
And also I think that's the interesting thing about Mahashweta
Yes.
Devi. She doesn't give a clear-cut idea. She
Yes.
was working in a home and her Malik made a move on her, and for whatever reason she decided to go along with it, right? But she says that I didn't come on to you, I didn't try to make this happen. So there may have been a lingering thing of, if I resist, will I lose my job? All that, but that is not explicitly explained, right? But the other woman you mentioned, Ela, who's the wife, who has got a wife of the central protagonist, Arjun. She is a very upper middle class kind of girl. She's comes from a totally different background. Her father is a judge, retired judge, and things like that. She has got pregnant after 10 years of marriage. And she's deeply excited about it and scared about it. And during these 48 hours of the novel, she happens to be living in her mother's home. Now, her character is seen in a very kind of sarcastic way by my Mahashweta Devi. I had tried to find some sympathy there, but the way she's described is seen through a class lens. Privileged, spoiled, clingy, sort of a little. We have a lovely Bengali word called Naka. How many of you know what Naka is?
tantrums and
Acting very demure
Yeah,
and
demure
coy and
and all
very
that,
sort
yes.
of, girly and pouting. That's supposed to be Naka. Do you have a word for it in your own language? Anybody? It's hard to describe in English.
someone who's pretentious.
Huh? Nakhrewali. Absolute Nakhrewali. So she's a bit like that. In the way she's described by the author. And we don't see much of her. So I would agree with you there. But I think the reason for that comes out of Mahashweta, they seeing that class as like that,
Kind
spoiled,
of sarcastic, yeah.
spoiled and entitled.
She can be condescending.
Yes, yes, to greatly condescending, and that comes through in the book. Yeah. So
But Ela, the
That's the wife,
yeah.
yeah.
No,
She's
the
the
other one.
Jamuna.
No, Jamuna, this Mr. Desai's wife, who, when he finds her hysterical, he just gives her an injection to calm her down so that he can function.
Oh, okay, I know. Not Ela is the
No,
not the
no,
wife.
not the
Okay, I
wife.
understand what you're saying. So one of the characters in the book is this Mr. Desai, who has a wife who has unfortunately sort of had a kind of mental collapse because she lost her daughter in very tragic circumstances. See, I'm avoiding going into too many plot details because we're
we
not
have to
going to
read
be
the
able to
book, yeah,
discuss things in detail. But that character is not conscious, hardly conscious throughout. She's sort of deeply medicated. But also, that's very funny because when she is sane, she's busy abusing everybody and accusing everybody of all sorts of things, including the maid Jamuna who ends up dead. So there's that side, but she's also got lots of. She's faced it.
Yes, so actually you think her women characters have two sides to them. I mean, she's being sarcastic about the weaker side, that's more her sarcasm, not really part of the character. Otherwise, they're very aware, they're very courageous, and they do exactly what they want.
I suppose so, yes.
Yes.
I mean, certainly the mentally, challenged. No, she's not mentally challenged. She was apparently a super wife.
Yes.
Wonderful mother, very efficient, very socially active with community groups, etc., till she had a nervous breakdown.
Yes,
So that's a different thing. She was a very capable woman. And her husband loved her because she had been such a wonderful companion.
Yes,
And he's doing everything he can to protect her now that she's helpless. So that's a different story.
Yes.
The wife, whose name I am now forgetting, but I can look it up if anybody really wants to know. You can ask me the important question. I thought Ela is the sick one. Anyway, whatever.
Anyway.
Kumkum. Who's read the book?
Yes, Kumkum.
There you go.
Oh,
Good
very
for you. All right. Yeah. Kumkum. That's right. So, so Kumkum is the one who I never found any particular shades in her character. But the other two were interesting. Any of what you want to talk about?
Maheshwata Devi was actually a political activist in a way that was always for the, challenged people. But West Bengal did not accept her, especially the previous government. Could you explain that? Though she was very much a leftist.
Yeah. So that again needs to be kind of unpacked a little. The former left, which was the CPM, was also in charge of the state for 24 years or more. And they were very, very established. And they had their cultural coterie, who were the accepted, famous writers and who you looked up to and admired and who got awards and things. Mahashweta was never part of that because she also had a tendency not to hold back not to pull her punches.
She never joined their party.
No, she may have earlier and left. Many people did who were of a leftist persuasion, cultural figures, when they found that the formal left was becoming very authoritative. Tends to happen with governments, you'll notice. But the thing is that she always insisted on a right to be critical. So she would, if something was done that she didn't approve of, and because she was constantly fighting for the complete subaltern, marginalized people, holding up their rights, going and supporting them in court, making sure that if the police were after them, she would fight for them. So because of that, she always kept her own distance, but it's true she was not very popular with them. If they wanted a face at a function or to give an award or something, they wouldn't think of her. Firstly, they never knew if she'd even accept. She had that very dry humor. I've seen her, people coming in, touching her feet, offering her this, that, and the other, and she's like, yeah, what do you want? What do you want? So they'd say, oh, we want you to come and preside over this function. She said, will you support my NGO? Will you give me funds? If you give me funds, I'll come. That's all right. But not if you want me to waste my time. I don't do all this stuff. So, that's the kind of personality she had. Very dry, very forthright, but also very full of humor.
So she came from a very privileged background. And what is the turning point in her life which made her turn activist and sort of, is that very, how did she discover that journey?
Well, see, when you say privileged background, she came from culturally a
Culturally.
very respected family. You've heard of Ritik Ghatak, the playwright, the
Yes.
movie makers, filmmaker? She was his niece. They all came from the Ghatak family. Everybody in that family was someone famous. Someone's making films, someone's writing plays, someone's doing literature, so they were singers. So she came from that kind of a background, but they were all socially conscious and committed people, almost like to the, to the last person. So that was not a big, I don't think it was like this big,
Step forward,
yeah,
leap forward, no.
aha moment for her. It was just something she grew up with and felt was the right thing to do. But the-
Satishi, you want to ask something?
There is I wanted to read a little
Please do.
passage
Please do read.
because it relates back to what you were saying about two things. One is, as an activist, why choose? We were talking about this outside. Why choose a story like this? What has that got to do with activism of the kind that she believed in? That's one. And the other thing is about her vision of class layers and the kind of ambiguity that she allowed to exist in her mind even when she was talking about class and power, right? And it also gives you a glimpse into the kind of person Jamuna was, after which we can decide whether she was pathetic or not pathetic. So Jamuna lived in a slum in this controversial neighborhood. There are many reasons why this area bordering the docks, this is Kidarpur for those who know Calcutta, is so controversial. Rumor has it that here, even the common man is involved in some form of antisocial activity. But can the residents of multi-story apartment blocks like Bornomala afford to worry about such things? They need servants after all. Shiny modern flats filled with the latest gadgets and appliances. The mistresses of such homes don't do any household chores. This society, in its attempt to be like the West, has aped its outward appearance to perfection, but not its inner attitudes. In the West, most people don't have domestic help. Husbands and wives share the chores, but the upper echelons of this country don't accept this. In their hearts, each one is landed gentry. They want a maid, they want a houseboy, they want a cook, they want it all. Not a single one wants to help with the housework. Hence, the nearby slums to the rescue. What are the residents of these multi-stories to do after all? They know these people are suspect, yet they employ them. But they're nervous. So they need a security service, 24-hour guards. Bornomala too has such an arrangement, which is why Arjun Babu is not worried. Arjun Babu is the main character, male character, who, thanks for that, who has employed Jamuna, right? And he's a on the rise, a real estate person involved in construction, involved in lots of things, making tons and tons of money. Arjun Babu is not worried at all. His house is filled with locker after locker, expensive brands of lockers. Before the cash is deposited into anonymous accounts, it is stored at home. Nothing to worry about. There is a security service after all. But what is all this that Jamuna is saying? Babu, what is it, Jamuna? Have to talk. To me? In her nylon sari and backless blouse given by Kumkum, the wife, a furious Jamuna glares at him with furious eyes. If not you, then who? You're talking to me like this? I'll talk to you as I like. What can you do about it? You bastard, you damn devil. Chi. Shame on you, Jamuna. Bodhi goes away and you start fooling around with me. Didn't think about all this then. Hush, Jamuna, not so loud. You know what's happened to me? What's happened? Jamuna places her hands on her belly in a telling gesture and looks at him. Yeah, yeah. Yes, yours. How long? Since Bodhi left? Barely 7 months when you got rid of her. Now you sit and count. Arjun Babu feels faint. Jamuna, what are you saying? Don't you know what I'm saying? My husband hasn't come to me for so long. You forced yourself on me. No one else has the guts to lay a finger on me. Now you better sort it out. Me? I have to. Then who? Why should I? Think you'll get out of it. You don't know Jamuna. Where I live, there are plenty of gangs. If I spill the beans, do you know what will happen to you? And so on and so forth, right? And then she negotiates with him that he's going to give her money, you'll help her get rid of the problem, etc., etc. So that, I think, as a little slice of the novel, gives you an idea of her attitude towards the relationship between the different segments, the underclass and the upper class, and also the Jamuna, who, has found herself in this situation.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's a delightful. I mean, I loved her right through the novel. But what I felt was, in the end, she was a victim. That's the only thing. But she was a delightful character, very courageous, very forthright, very, amazing character. That's what I meant about the women. But yes, her real self was someone else. But circumstances, like in all women, she became a victim to the society.
Right.
Yes, yes. Satish ji, you want to ask a question?
I would like to ask you if you face any challenges while translating, the linguistic or the cultural challenges. And allied to this, there is a question. You see, when somebody is trying to create a text in English, he may suffer from an anxiety of Indianness, in the sense that he will have to homogenize that experience to cater to an audience who may also be English. So you are writing not only for the English readers, but those who are the readers in English, right? So how do you go about translating those cultural nuances, shifting, or do you have any such anxiety about the Indianness as to how to explain to the wider
Right,
readership?
Thank you very much for that question, because I think the answer I'm going to give is going to be common to almost everyone who translates from an Indian language into English, right?
Transcreation, yes.
Well, it's
a way.
more, all translation ends up being transcreation, because, you can't plot it like a map. This word it becomes this.
In some
But-
way, it's a new version, the text,
It
an
is.
extension of the text.
Yeah. So what I was trying to sort of say is that with a writer like Mahashweta, a lot of significance is embedded in her choice of language. Like within one story, she will use words and use language which is totally places a person in a caste location, class location, region location. When you read it, you can tell, oh, this is a Bihari maid who's come from out of the city to work here. Or this is an East Bengali migrant who's working. You can tell from the way they speak in the language. This is a very well-educated, upper middle class kind of a person, right? You can tell all that without her having to say a word to you about who they are, just from the way they speak. So this becomes the big challenge when you're doing it in English, because English flattens everything. Now, so you have choices. Are you going to make her speak in Cockney because she's a maid, so who comes from a lower class? Are you going to make someone speak in some fancy Oxford English or Shakespearean type of English because they happen to be a person speaking in an old-fashioned Bengali? Now, everybody can make their own choices, but the way I see it, because when I've read that kind of thing being done, it's alienating. Okay, as soon as you hear Cockney or you hear Black American type, yo, bro, and all being used, it just makes you feel that you're in some other place. It just dislocates the narrative. So I would prefer to try and use other kinds of strategies, like maybe making it incorrect language, English structure, maybe using words that are more slang words, keeping a lot of the local references, which you'll find even in this book, particular kinds of dishes. There's one whole conversation between these two friends, Arjun and his friend, where they're talking about the fact that their wives won't allow them to eat the food they want. So Arjun wants absolutely simple, bhorta and korela and stuff like that, which is neem begun, which he never gets at home. And his friend, who gets only that at home, prefers eating in his house because his wife makes Mexican dishes and Swedish dishes and uses a cookbook to, make fancy things. So they don't, again, that whole conversation is just about, is just about the dishes, and you can immediately get what he's saying. One wife is very, very rooted in her cultural background, and the other one is very pretentious. She wants to try out fancy things which don't work according to her husband, but she still tries them out. So, this is one big challenge of translating. It's constant negotiation. It's like walking a tightrope, trying to balance and balance so you don't fall off on this side or that side of getting it too opaque for the reader and getting it too simplified for the reader. That's one. Then there's another thing which is so you must tell me when time is up. I could give a whole class on this. The other thing that's so typical of Mahashweta Devi is that she does not wish to simplify things for her readers. This she has said openly and over and over. Why shouldn't they? If they don't understand the word, let them go and look it up. It's a word that's used. People who know it know it. So you go, let them find out, let them struggle, let them also try and. So she likes to leave ambiguity. She doesn't want to clarify everything for the reader because she feels the reader must put in some effort as well. So that again becomes a big challenge because our instinct is to simplify. If we are saying that she squatted down and lit the unun, we'll want to say that, this shows an evidence of a poor person living in a hut because that's who uses the earth oven, etc. And we'll try and say that somehow, so somehow people get the picture. But she doesn't want that. She would prefer to sort of leave it and then maybe, so we do usually, I put a glossary at the end to indicate, and the glossary doesn't just give a simple thing like mud oven, which is typically found in homes, in slums, etc., so that you get the associations as well. So I think these are some of the challenges. The political ideology in which she is located, which doesn't want things to be simplified or placed on a platter for readers, wants the readers to approach the work and try and figure it out, and also the multiplicity and layered language that she uses. Yeah.
This is the last question, I think.
Just a word about the simplicity and the way the Mahashweta does not embellish her language. It's very crisp, it's very sharp, and I'll just read a few lines. Arjun Babu is thinking, weighed on the scales, who is more fortunate, he or Desai? It seems that the scales are tipped in his favor. Jamuna is in Desai's flat. Jamuna is not in Arjun's flat. Ila Desai is completely mad. Kumkum is not mad. Ila Desai wears shorts and t-shirts. Kumkum wears saris. Desai's life is dark. In Arjun's life, Jupiter is shining bright. The contractor's trade is thriving, will thrive. And that's exactly how you have translated, those lines without any embellishments.
It's a very good translation.
Simplifying them.
It's a delightful book. Please buy and read it. And now the house is open for questions. I'd be like the students first. Please, just Manojji. Yes. Just carry on, children who want to ask questions.
Good afternoon, everyone. I actually loved the book and I have read a significant amount of pages. So I have come to this page.
What is a significant amount of pages? Did you do a percentage analysis?
No, actually I couldn't complete the whole book.
I'm just teasing you. Yeah, carry on.
So I would like to recite some lines in in the 101th page, you wrote that.
That
Sorry.
is significant. Yes, carry on.
So you translated a line that is, due to excessive chastity, Bengali literature is not only in confinement, it is also riddled with disease. So could you please provide insights into what Mahashweta Devi was thinking and the context behind the statement?
This is Arjun Babu speaking, thinking, right?
No.
No. His friend.
Yes,
His friend.
Desai,
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah,
Desai.
yeah. Right, right, right. Okay. Yes, that was Mahashweta Devi being her sarcastic best, because she felt that a very kind of genteel literary language, which the canon proclaims and wishes to support, which would have started from the time of Rabindranath, a kind of accepted literariness that is throttling Bengali literature and culture, because it doesn't allow any space for the subaltern. So slang words, informal language, incorrect grammar maybe, these are things that will not allow to exist within the proper accepted borders of literary language.
Thank you so much.
Not at all. In this book, I think, yes, what she's trying to say is that if you look at it from different points of view, something that's truth can be untruth, and something that's untruth can be truth. So very much linked with societal norms, because depending on how you've been socialized and what you feel is your value system is according to you, your right and wrong, you'll stand on one side of the fence or the other. Like you can take a very moral attitude towards Jamuna. Oh, she's cheap woman, she's trying to take advantage of the situation, etc. But you can also understand that growing up as a complete struggler, clawing her way up, otherwise everyone was ready to exploit her. You read late in the book that she ran away from a welfare, like a so-called welfare home for girls. She was being exploited there. She tried to escape. So someone like her moral system is different. She doesn't have certain kind of values that protect her chastity to the same extent. So, this whole thing of, is this true, is this untrue, is this right, is this wrong, is very much linked with societal norms. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to ask a question?
Yeah, there's another question.
I think Manoj, you wanted to ask.
Last
There's
question.
a lady there. Okay. Sorry,
Yeah,
can we
last
have two questions? Only one.
Oh,
Tic-tac-toe.
eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Okay.
Short one.
That you have also
Short one.
grown up in the Calcutta of 1970s.
Yeah.
What is your personal take on that period?
Oh God, that's a very long question.
What's the difference? Is there,
I mean,
Yeah.
no, I think he
Question
means, is the Calcutta in the book somewhat similar to the Calcutta
I mean,
you live
your
in?
take. So
Yes,
some-
yes. Calcutta of the 70s was a very confusing period, because we had lots of shortages and deprivations. There was practically no power. We'd have long 8-hour power cuts. Phones didn't work. You couldn't get a gas connection. The roads were a mess. So it was not a very hospitable city, and everybody would feel sorry for us because we lived in that city. Now the tables are turned, and all the other cities are worse, and Calcutta is better. But at the same time, it was a very, I would say, vibrant city, which it never stopped being. It still is till now, with lots and lots of layers. So it's a complicated answer if you'd ask me economically or culturally or artsy.
personal.
Yeah. So that's my personal.
I think that's the is it Satishji, is it the last question?
I think
I
we
mean,
come to
I
the
think
close
you're
of
out
the
of
session
time
now.
now.
Yeah.
I'll be here.
We
So
have
if
had a
anybody
very-
else
Anyone
has,
wants to
especially
chat
the
with Anju?
students,
Yes, yes.
if anyone wants to ask a
It
question.
was a very engaging discussion, and we must thank Anjum and Wow for bringing her here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anjum. It's
Thank
a very
you very much.
contemporary
Thank you.
novel. Please read it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. One thing I really want to add here, surely in translations, the stakes are high. But Madam Anjum Katyal has, preserved the rawness and originality of the text very perfectly, very perfectly. And I also want to, I had written, multiple questions here, but I want to leave the discussion with all these questions. Like, how does power shape our lives and choices? Second question, how do urbanization and economic growth impact those at society's margins? How the worlds of haves and have-nots collides with tragic and deadly consequences, and what does the struggle for dignity look like in a world that often devalues it? And last question, how within the comedic facade theme of guilt, love, deceit, lust, greed, corruption, and hypocrisy intertwine, revealing the complex nature of truth through dualities. Thank you. Now, I would like to call Sanjeev Chopra sir on stage to present author's kit to our panelists. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Lastly,